Okay, cool. Today's podcast slash video blog is about Marcus Crassus, part 2. I covered him in a previous blog. It was about 26 minutes long. I really enjoyed that one. I'm super passionate, so I'm going to do another section because I didn't cover everything about him. And I'm going to cover a second book here, this black book. And this is Marcus Crassus and the Late Roman Republic. By Ward, and I think it says Missouri here. It might be like, Alan Mason Ward, University of Missouri Press. This book costed me $100 when I found this book. In my research, I was like, why is a book $100? Just print more books. Then it's simple supply and demand, right? I guess a lot of people aren't buying this book. Does this mean this book is garbage? Absolutely not. This means this book is gold. So this is, I came across Marcus Crassus, if you look at my other podcasts. Anyways, this Titan, Mongol, whatever you want to call him, this figure in history, I feel he's got lost in the sands of time. I haven't seen too many people in Hollywood or many people talk about him or write about him. And I came across him when I was studying Spartacus because I'm inspired by that story. Spartacus is something I really looked up to. So I thought the man who defeats Spartacus was pretty serious. And he caught my attention when I heard the famous line, "You're not rich unless you can afford your own army." So I was like, whoa, man, we better look into this a bit here. Let's dig into the details. And so I got sent into about a 4-month rabbit hole studying Marcus Crassus, but I've just been fascinated with my philosophy on the martial arts of money and just the years of studying great men and studying tycoons and business Mongols and just trying to take that knowledge and apply it to myself and how I can use these tools to better my life and my future for my children. So anyways, this is my second vlog on this character, part 2, and I actually made notes. So I've got 3 pages of notes here. It took me the whole morning to type them up, so I'll just get to it. I'm really passionate about this topic, this story. I can't wait. I'm probably going to do a professional interview with other people on this topic, but first, most important thing is, and so my principle for talking about this is studying this man, and then but from a business / entrepreneur perspective, what's relevant 2,000 years ago to what's relevant now, and how are the principles the same of the martial arts of money and pattern recognition. That's important. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about Crassus's family. Okay, when his brother died, he married his brother's sister. He acquired her assets. She was a modest, noble family, but she wasn't crazy rich or well off. But that's just kind of interesting. And I'm just going to read my notes here in order. This is the first time I've ever done notes on a video log, so we'll see how it goes. Now, when his father and brother died, he inherited 300 talents, which is 7.2 million sesterces, which I don't know what that converts into today's dollars. So look it up. Need a fact checker. Which had little to do with his wealth accumulation. So he inherited a bunch of wealth from the death of his father and his brother, but that had little to do with his massive wealth accumulation. And just so you know, I don't know off the top of my head, but this man is his wealth was estimated at 142 billion in today's dollars when he died. He's on I don't know what place he's on the top Ford list or Forbes list of the richest men ever in existence. So, but this is a big deal. That's why I'm covering it. So he made so his first profitable deal he made, he sold a house to Cicero for 3.5 million sesterces, and then another house to a consul for 13.4 million sesterces. I don't know how much that is in today's dollars again. History was clear. He wasn't born into a branch of wealth. After his immense wealth grew, he continued modest traditions. So when he became rich, like super, super rich, he still had humble, modest, everyday choices. He lived modestly. And that's a common theme between a lot of business tycoons that I study. Warren Buffett is one. A lot of, I would say, mentors or colleagues in my industry that I know, they live very modestly. They're not for luxury and that kind of stuff. Sure, who doesn't like nice things, but we'll get to that later. So he had the education of a senator's son, so he was good. He's affluent. He liked history and philosophy, which is very interesting. So much to learn from history and philosophy. I was kind of negative about history and philosophy when I was younger, in my 20s, when I went to university, just because I wanted a job. I didn't know how a history degree would get me a job. Am I right or wrong? I don't know. I didn't know. So Marcus Crassus got military training under his father. His father fought as a proconsul in a war. His father influenced the way for his entire family, because you have to understand that Rome at the time, and we're talking 50 BCE. It's a long time ago. The Roman culture was high competitive. The family nobles, and you wanted to do something with your family name, and make something out of your family, because it's very competitive at the time. So the traditions Marcus inherited from his father, his father's father, and his father's father's father. So Marcus was actually fourth generation from wisdom and knowledge passed down. Crassus had a longer history of heritage compared to other noble houses. So that's a huge competitive advantage. And if you think of the time, 50 BCE, there's no internet, right? There's barely any libraries. There's barely any books. So knowledge is power at a time like this. So this is definitely, an advantage Crassus to accumulate wealth, because he inherited the business acumen, knowledge he received passed down from generation to generation. That's like bringing up your kids, teaching them about money, teaching them about history, teaching them about the world, right? It's kind of like monkey see, monkey do. You only know what you know. So it's interesting now. If you apply this to today's society, we have so much knowledge, we have access to so much opportunity, and it's just kind of mind-blowing, where nowadays knowledge is power, but there's knowledge everywhere. And so that's kind of what fascinates me about reading all these books and doing these video logs, because like there's tremendous value in here, and it just excites me. His grandfather started the second college in Roman history. So I thought that was pretty cool too. They had very stoic traditions. There's this Greek word, it's called agelastus, and it means the one who never laughs. Crassus' father was a textbook Roman noble. So before Marcus Crassus became who he was, he had he had the most ideal upbringing you can, most ambitious, most motivated, fourth generation, and his father his father had a triumph in Rome, this huge parade, which is like the biggest honor you could receive in Roman history. They don't give out too many of those. So that's one of Marcus's ambitions, that he had to achieve at least what his father did. And we'll get into that a bit. Yeah, if you ever seen, I have a note here I made just for me. If you ever seen, what's it called? What's his name? The Cosmos by Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think it's the first episode, maybe the second. He talks about natural selection. So if you think of if you watch it if you haven't seen it, but you talk about where we come from as organisms in the process of natural selection, and the strong survive. So if you apply that to the story of Marcus Crassus, one of the more well-off noble families, fourth generation, what were they doing there a little bit different? And that's why I study this stuff, because I want to duplicate the same things with my life and with my children. And I want other people too. It's so important who you hang around with. Crassus' father, had a triumph. But also, so Crassus had the triumph, or Crassus' father had the triumph, but that's what he wanted. And you'll see at the end of his career, this is what ultimately blinded him, because he wanted the fame and the glory. And what I've learned is fame and glory it's kind of like bad energy or devil type stuff, because it blinds you, shiny stuff, material things. And a lot of people, Henry Ford, when he was dying, he didn't really care much about material things. He more just enjoyed his time with people and stuff like that. And that's really what matters, because at the end of the day, we all die, no matter what. Even a great man like this, and even Rockefeller. Yeah, one cool thing about Crassus's father, he actually eliminated human sacrifice from Roman culture. That's pretty huge. Okay, my dad eliminated human sacrifice. Okay, well that's cool, man. Like, that's crazy. You kind of compare that to like Obamacare nowadays to take care of people. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I'd like to get a discussion on that. Oh yeah, that's why. I have a note here for me. Just your second generation children. Okay, it's so important. If you want to mean something, leave a legacy or change something in the world or live the most life that you can. It's so important to master the martial arts and money as a good leader. Um, you know, and me as a father or a future father, I want to give a good seed. My name is Jesse. It's from the Bible, but it's to bear good fruit, right? So if you think of yourself as a seed for future growth, so you be a good seed. The good seed grows into a strong trunk, gives off and good branches and gives off good fruit. That's good children, and then they can do what they do, just like Marcus's Crassus, fourth generation, monkey see, monkey do. Okay, so his father had great courage. He campaigned in Spain, but his father and his brother were killed in a civil war against Cinna and Sulla. I won't even go into that. That's a whole other topic. But it left Marcus alone in the political Roman arena, alone to make his stamp and to compete. So when Marcus went for his political career rise, he had no support. His entire family was dead. So, and they died about 27 to 28. So he decided to go into the political arena. Now, his family wasn't rich, but they were very resourceful. I just wanted to pause here and talk about what applies today that applied to now. So the political arena 2,000 years ago, there's a new kind of trend coming out on the internet. It's about branding in the branding arena, kind of like what I'm doing. I'm just really doing video blogs and just having fun. This is a passion project. I'm not taking it too seriously. I'm just spitting out good wisdom that I know and value to people. But some would say that I'm in the field of the branding arena. So it's like, I don't know, I hear some of these motivational talks and people are like, I don't know, I think people are pretty soft for the most part. So yeah, you think of Marcus Crassus, the guy who was going to Roman political arena, and he got to the top, and he was the man at the top of the Roman political arena, and he had no one. He had himself. His family was dead. How'd you do that? And like, okay, you're trying to build a personal brand. Like, what? Really? Like, don't complain. Anyways, I just thought that was an interesting issue. I'd like to have a discussion on that. That could be a whole podcast on its own. But Crassus learned early on how to exploit what he had to acquire more when the time was right. So he knew that opportunity, and that's where I kind of, the alpha male, the hunt. Yeah, Morgan, Obamacare was the worst. Yeah, I have no idea about Obamacare at all. Like, I just don't know, but it'd be interesting to have a discussion about it just to see what happened. But yeah, so leverage. So knowing the opportunity. That's one thing I will pat myself on the shoulder. Who really cares about what I do? But I've always had a sense for opportunity, and every time an opportunity comes across my plate, I hop on it. It's the tables have kind of turned now where I'm the guy that can provide opportunity to other people. So that's interesting. That's kind of cool. I'm just going through that phase right now. But I grew up from humble beginnings in a city, Thunder Bay, Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, where there is not much economic development going on. So I grew up with modest means, a lot of financial struggle. So I always wanted to be rich. That was what I wanted to be when the teacher asked you want to be fireman, police officer, whatever. I said Rich in grade 2. She's like, I remember that like it was yesterday. It was pretty funny. Okay, so yeah, we'll talk about so Crassus's motivation was to emulate his lineage, right? Follow in the footsteps of his father, his grandfather's great-grandfather's accomplishments in the political arena, and then avenge the brutal deaths of his father in civil war. So his father and his brother had a brutal death. I don't have the details ready for that, and we don't need to go into it, but they died in war. So you could see if you're a fourth generation stud nobleman 2,000 years ago, you don't want to avenge your father and your brother and your fourth generation brought up this way. This is all you know, the process of natural selection. Yeah, this is a hungry dude. So we'll talk about the rise of Marcus Crassus now. Crassus inserted, so there's this thing called, when Sulla and Cinna went to war, it was a civil war. I forget who won. I think it was, it was Sulla. He made this proscription list. Look, I'll link my other video here about what a proscription list is, but basically, Sulla won. He said, all these people die, and they go kill them. Straight up. I'm the man, I won the war, I'm in charge, all these people die. He writes on a piece of paper, and they go kill him. So Crassus was like one of Sulla's right-hand men, and Crassus put other names into the conscription list, conscription list, and took their wealth. So killed them basically and just took their estate. Straight up robbery. Crazy, but that's the time. Crassus understood the uses of a very great weapon, wealth. Carefully and skillfully, he amassed a large fortune in order to build a powerful, independent political position. Plan to the end kind of thing. Know your end goal before you start your journey. And if you look at Donald Trump, that's what he's kind of done. He's put himself in a position. He's built himself an independent political position. But we live in different times. This isn't 2,000 years ago. Donald Trump is not independent because you don't get to the top alone. Like you just, if he started a third party, that'd be, I don't know what would happen. But so yeah, that's kind of an interesting issue that would be a good discussion as well. Crassus often found himself in power positions where he could shake a finger and then he would be put in someone's will. So he's just like, yep, boom, put my name in his will so he gets his estate. Everything. That's crazy. Now, I have a note here I'd like to talk about. I have another video on Vladimir Putin that I read. I'm going to compare that comment to Crassus putting his name in someone else's will and acquiring his estate to Putin. There's a chapter in this book I read. They call it Kremlin Inc., where Putin grew up with no money. But when he got into power, he took over lots of stuff, and ran the government like a corporation and filled the state coffers with billions of dollars that were never there before. Very, very interesting read. I'll put a link to that as well, that podcast as well. Yeah, Crassus is famous for saying you're not rich unless you can afford your own army. That's when the Spartacus War was happening. And I'm not going to go into that too much because I covered that in the previous blog. But he just said you can't even call yourself rich if you can't afford your own army, because he was the only guy that could build an army in Rome. And the two other armies, I think they're in Spain and Egypt. There's no army to defend against Spartacus, who already beat 9 Roman armies. They just had no resources left. How do you plan on our 2 main armies are away taking other lands that a third slave rebellion is going to happen, and we're going to lose 9 armies to a slave rebellion? You can't really predict that. So Marcus Crassus came in, built his own army with his own means, and defeated Spartacus. Here we are. Crassus focused on Roman real estate when there was no zoning regulation and no building codes. Pretty interesting. Buildings were often crowded together. As a result, fires always happened. He had slaves trained in architecture, building trades, and he started, I think, the first fire brigade in Rome. Like, there's no such thing as a fire department. And I'm just going to read an excerpt here from page 72 of this book by Mr. Ward. Crassus was able to buy up a great deal of property in the city. Since there was no zoning regulations or building code at Rome, buildings were often crowded together and poorly constructed or designed. As a result, fires were endemic. Crassus assembled a corps of more than 500 slaves trained in architecture and building trades. When fires broke out in Rome, he or his agents would offer to buy for a low price burning buildings or nearby ones. Not wishing to face the risk of losing everything or to bear the expenses of rebuilding, many owners took Crassus's offer. If some of these properties subsequently escaped the flames, so much better for Crassus, who had acquired prime real estate at prices well below market value. Those buildings that were burned were repaired or replaced by Crassus's skilled slaves on land that could not otherwise be bought so reasonably in crowded metropolis. Indeed, he became proverbial for his building activity. That's crazy. Morgan, this is 50 BCE, around that 50 to 72 BCE. It's crazy times. Okay. So he found one of his things he did. He found non-educated slaves. You could just go buy slaves pretty cheap, and then he would educate them. Table servants, like waiters, were a large portion of his profits. He would do like large just rental services, large banquets. He would supply all the human. He would run like a nice banquet, supply all the humans to run it. He'd run it like a business. He was just a businessman, a capitalist. Is that evil? Is it bad? Well, I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. My opinion is no. It's just kind of how the world was and the way it is. And there's a whole concept of modern day slavery too that, I might touch on a little bit later that we won't get into now. He also had mines Mines were his other source of income as well. So when he took over people's estates, they owned like a silver mine that he just took that through the power of the pen. That's freaking crazy. So multiple sources of income. I just want to talk about, this is a principle that applies today. The richest people, they all have multiple streams of income. So oftentimes I find I'm pretty challenged when, I'm meeting people or whatever, and they ask me what I do for a living. And I've kind of struggled with that for a few years now. Well, not struggled with it. It's just kind of a growing thing. And lately I've been saying, depends who I'm talking to, because really depends on, like, what do you want to talk about? Which topic? I can talk about 10 different topics if you want. Like, so trying to build a rapport with someone, especially when you don't know where they come from or who they are or whatever, right? Like, what type of language do I use? But lately I've been just telling people I'm a businessman. So we'll see how that goes. I know Tim Ferriss, he would, in the 4-Hour Work Week, he would tell people he's a drug dealer. But I don't want to be, I think that's kind of pompous or whatever. I don't want to be, I'm not saying Tim Ferriss is pompous. I'm saying I don't really want to say stuff like that. I don't know, it doesn't work for me. But so getting back to Crassus, one of his great personal attributes, which is very relevant to today, is his charisma. He greeted everyone with smiles, everyone of all ranks. He had a sympathetic ear, showed empathy, because he loaned so many people money and made interest. So we've got waiters, banquet halls, rental services. He's got tons of mind. Someone said he owned most of Rome, the land, most of Rome. Everybody owed him money. He was just a beast, just an absolute tycoon. Crassus ruled by financial obligation. He controlled people by lending them money. That's similar to when I have a job, or if you have a job, right? You gotta go to work for the man, like, damn the man. Crassus was definition of the man. So it's pretty interesting. Okay, I just got a couple quotes here I'm going to read. The richest man, out of the Mr. Ward's book here, the richest man became the most powerful man because lending money, he could he could put most political politicians under obligations. So if you think about politicians nowadays, corruption, is this corruption? It's a great question. I don't know. Like, what do you think? Is the fact that you loan a politician money and now, there's that unspoken law that, okay, well, if you owe me $1 million, pass this bill or vote this way. Like, get over it kind of thing. That's nothing new. First question, is that corruption? Second thing, that exists. So like, this isn't a conspiracy theory or anything like that. Me as a chartered accountant, I'm more than qualified to make these claims. This is just how money works with humans. Like, get over it. Like, deal with it, right? So it's like, instead, when I look at the money world, like I live in Vancouver, for example, houses are crazy expensive. It's insane. And instead of me getting worked up and bitter about how expensive everything is, it's like, well, it's not really that expensive. It's just like, I can't afford it. So I got to learn the money matrix game out here. It's just different, right? So either learn the rules and play them better, or just squabble and be angry. But being angry is not going to really change anything. It's just going to hold you back from moving forward. Another quote I have here is, the power Crassus amassed through his acquisition of wealth, clients, and friends enabled him to overcome his lack of favor among many powerful nobles. So, and it's no surprise that Crassus was a chess master. Like, he was just amazing at chess and strategy and tactics. So he came into the political arena with nothing, but he knew the amount of wealth that he accumulated can control people. And as one man to become the proconsul, defeat Spartacus, that amount of wealth he has, and then go on a campaign to take over Syria. It's pretty wild. Yeah, and if you look at I have just a side note here for what applies to today. If you look at all the number of businesses out there, and I don't have a stat or a fact checker on me, so don't quote me on these numbers, but if you look at all the businesses out there, I'm going to bet that 3 out of 10 businesses are actually businesses creating value. They're the ones bringing in money. They're the rainmakers. The 7 out of 10 other businesses or support services, meaning they're taking $1 out of the pocket of someone else, bringing in the $1. So business is a zero-sum game. Business has to take in $1, and those are people like, for me, my email business, right? I'm sending emails and people click on my emails, and then I get money. And then there's, I need to buy a server, so there's a company that has support. So another way I look at it is like, if you look at primitive time, if, to get 10 people, 3 people go out, say in, 1000 BC, or whatever, 500 after death. You get 3 people that go out and kill the moose, bring it back to the village. 10 out of 10 people eat. So the 7 out of 10 kind of get table scraps, if you will. It's just one way to look at it. Is that right or wrong? I don't know. It's just an interesting view. Yeah, so obviously Crassus uses money to loan money to many senators, which gave him immense power. And it's just kind of similar to when I have to go to work, when I had jobs. I have to go. It's the contract, right? So it's just kind of interesting. I'm going to talk about the Spartacus War / time in slavery. The book didn't discuss that much about the Spartacus War. It was just kind of another notch. I felt after reading this book, it was kind of another notch on Marcus Crassus's list of achievements, which is like huge. He literally saved Rome. And it was just kind of one thing that he did. They actually didn't give him one of those triumphs because they're just, the consensus was, well, you didn't beat a real army, you just beat a slave army, even though the slave army beat 9 Roman armies, and like Rome was going to be decimated, and Marcus paid with his own money to build his own army to defend Rome, and they still didn't give him a triumph. So that's tells you right there the animosity of the political game, where people want to see you succeed, just as long as you don't over succeed them. And that's very, very, very common. I learned that in the corporate world. When I went into the corporate world, I actually was completely ignorant. I never worked in the corporate world. Yeah, for people in their, especially men, younger guys in your younger 20s, and I know this, just be careful when you are, like, you can consider to be a threat. If you're educated, you're good with people, you're motivated, you're a threat. And it's commonly, I don't know, I don't want to say it's bears. It might be bears. They might kill their cubs so that they don't take their future food. It's crazy stuff people do for money and food. So I talked about this before, but after Spartacus's the war of Spartacus, Crassus donated 10% of all his wealth for a sacrifice to Hercules to raise his popularity among Romans. He knew that he just saved Rome. Now was his chance to go to political rise, to be a consul of Rome. Now I just finished reading The Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, and there's a common thread between billionaires and from Tools of Titans, and just what I've noticed too through my studies is that a lot of billionaires, from what I see, I'm talking about pattern recognition now, they're very passionate about giving and donating and giving their wealth away to make things better. So what Crassus did, he had a huge feast, about 10,000 tables, and every citizen in Rome was given 3 months' supply of grain in the name of Crassus. Every citizen of Rome was given 3 months' supply of grain out of his own bankroll, and to raise his popularity. He knew, give people something to praise, and they're going to love you. You look at Donald Trump, right? He's done some of these tactics to bring his popularity up to get votes. Putin knew that the media was one of the things of the Putin book. He knew that the media is power. He knew this before social media even exist, and he dominated, controlled the media, and so do all media tycoons in wherever. That they control the media, they control the network, what messages go on that network, which is pretty cool now. These times, you can do whatever you want. Like, I can talk about this topic, like, who's going to put me on TV to talk about this? Probably not that many people, unless I build a following or popularity, but I don't really care about that. I just want to get this out. Question from Morgan. Do you think people who come from small fortunes, who become tycoons, are more ambitious than people who come from nothing and make small fortunes? Well, the question is, do I think? And the truth is, you don't really know, man. What I've learned from all these,